Hi everybody, today we're going to continue to look at causes of the Civil War, focusing primarily on slavery and kind of asking the question of ourselves, what is worth fighting for? Because certainly that is something everybody involved in the Civil War had to answer for him or herself. Whether they were immigrants from other countries that came here to fight, whether they were from the north, from the south, maybe they were Native Americans, maybe there were people that lived as far away as California that came to fight in the war. They had to ask that question themselves, because it wasn't at all uncommon for people during the Civil War to be fighting neighbors or possibly even family members in this bloody tragedy that engulfed the United States for 4 years. And so what is worth fighting for? So let's look at the causes of the Civil War, and we're going to begin by reviewing the Missouri Compromise of 1820. Missouri wanted to enter the United States as a slave state, and up until this time we had an equal amount of slave and an equal amount of free states, which was what they had always strived for, was to keep a balance between those two, so that no one state or no one idea, whether it be pro-slavery or anti-slavery, could be more powerful than one another in the U.S. Congress in Washington, D.C., because that's where all the laws were made. And if slave states have more representation in Congress, then they're likely going to make laws that favor slavery. Likewise, if free states have more power in the U.S. Congress, they're going to make laws that get rid of slavery. And so they always try to keep it balanced to avoid bloodshed for no other reason, really and truly. And so Missouri enters the United States as a slave state, and to keep balance in the country and in the U.S. Congress, part of Massachusetts will be turned into the state of Maine, and therefore enter as a free state, because Massachusetts was in a free area of the United States in the northern part. And slavery was then allowed anywhere below the 36-30 line, and that would just happen to be Missouri's southern border. Now, Missouri itself was, and this is just a representation of the Missouri Compromise, Missouri itself was above the 36-30 line, but so were Kentucky and Virginia and Maryland and Delaware and so forth. And so all of these states above that line had slavery for decades and decades, and that wasn't going to change. But from here on out, from 1820 and on, any state that wants to join the United States, if they fall below this line, they can be slave. If they are north of it, they will be free. Then we have the Compromise of 1850, 30 years later, also written by the same man, Henry Clay, has to help compromise the situation when California wants to become a state as a result of a huge population surge because of the California gold rush. People are rushing to that state, and very quickly, within a year of the gold being discovered in California, it has enough people to become a state. They want to enter the country as a free state, much to the anger and disappointment of Southerners who do not like that. Again, it will throw the balance of free versus slave states out of whack, and that is just simply not, that's not okay. And so Southerners say, no, you can't do that, yada yada yada. Henry Clay compromises. He rises to the occasion, takes on this task, and decides he's going to come up with a plan that pleases both sides. So in the Compromise of 1850, to please Southern slave owners, Henry Clay says that the territories of New Mexico and Utah will be allowed to decide if they want slavery. So anybody living there can vote yay or nay. Do we want slavery? Do we not want slavery? He's really pretty confident that slavery will never take hold in those areas, however, because they are, for all practical purposes, desert states. Plantation agriculture will not survive in those states. So he's okay with making that those areas places where people can vote. He also makes a stricter fugitive slave law, which is something we'll talk about on the next slide. To make Northerners happy, the slave trade is ended in Washington, D.C. So there's no more trading of slaves in Washington, D.C. Now, if you know anything about where Washington, D.C. is located, it is located in the South. It is located in southern slaveholding areas. So that one area, that one tiny community, when war breaks out, when the Civil War breaks out, will be completely surrounded by slave states. So it'll be a federal area, a free area, surrounded by slave-owning territories. California, as we said earlier, will enter as a free state, and all this does is kick the problem of slavery further down the road for other generations to solve. And eventually, you can only kick that can down the road so often before you simply run out of compromises. You either have to address the issue or go to war over it. And that's essentially what will happen. So just to kind of come back to this map, Washington, D.C. is about here. And as you can see, it's surrounded by slave states. So that's going to be a problem during the Civil War when they find themselves surrounded by slave area. So the Fugitive Slave Act, the other part of the Compromise of 1850, makes an old law harsher, worse. It was a law that was actually created around 1793 to punish slaves that run away, fugitives, somebody that's running away from the law. And so fugitive slaves were punished and had been for quite a long time, but they, escaped slaves frequently had help from people that wanted to help them get to freedom by providing homes, shelter, food, clothing, whatever, money if need be to get where they needed to go. That was never illegal before. Now in 1850, it is illegal to help escape slaves, and you can be arrested and punished just like slaves can. And so Northerners, that's really a wake-up call for Northerners, those that are helping escape slaves. And not only that, even if you don't help escape slaves, if you see somebody you think is an escaped slave and you don't turn them in, that's a problem too. And so Northerners do agree to California entering as a free state only because they have to also accept this more strict and harsh Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. In 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act was passed, which essentially nullified or made useless the Missouri Compromise. So in 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act said that Kansas and Nebraska, even though they were north of the 3630 line, and really, if you follow the Missouri Compromise strictly, should have been free states. But in 1854, Congress said, you know what, we're going to change that. We're going to take away the Missouri Compromise. And we're going to say that those areas north of the 3630 line, we're going to give them an opportunity to vote whether or not they want slaves or whether or not they want to remain free states. And that's the idea of popular sovereignty, once again, where people get to vote on what they want. And this really becomes a problem. So you have the Kansas-Nebraska territory, which are clearly above the 3630 line and should be free, but the Kansas-Nebraska Act really made all of that useless. And what happens now is that Southerners see an opportunity to spread slavery to these areas above the 3630 line. So what they do is they start sending in people that are pro-slavery to live here so that they can vote for slavery. And to counteract that, Northerners send people that are against slavery to live in Kansas. So you have pro-slavery people, you have anti-slavery abolitionists moving to Kansas to vote, and and hopefully, either to spread slavery or to put an end to slavery. And what happens is that these two groups, the pro-slavery and anti-slavery groups, do not like one another. So these two groups don't like each other, obviously, and things become very violent in Kansas. Kansas is eventually voted in as a slave state. The pro-slave voters defeat the anti-slave voters, but it's not without a lot of bloodshed. There's a lot of bloodshed between these two groups, led by abolitionist John Brown. This really becomes a mini civil war. This is like a trial run for the real event that begins in 1861. A lot of bloodshed, a lot of people die. This was just a warm-up for the most horrific events that would occur a few years later. In 1857, another cause of the Civil War involved a slave named Dred Scott. Dred was a slave, as I said, who filed a lawsuit suing his, he actually filed several lawsuits and went through several trials. But the one that matters is the one that occurred in 1857. Dred Scott, just a little background information, was a slave living in Missouri. His owner moved to the free territory of Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. He was in the military. He had a slave. He moved north where slavery was not legal. But if you were in the military and you had slaves, you could take them there. So when his owner moved north, he actually allowed Dred to live freely. Dred married, had children, had a family and everything. Then all of a sudden his owner decides he wants to move back to Missouri where Dred was initially a slave, and take Dred Scott with him. Dred is furious about this. He pleads with his owner not to take him. He's married. He's lived as a free man for many, many years. Don't take him back to slavery. His owner says he's going to do it anyway. He does. Dred sues his owner. He sues a number of people and goes through the court system, and he says his lawyers that argue for him say that once free, always free. He had become a free man. You can't just all of a sudden rip him out of freedom and take him into slavery. The Supreme Court, though, disagreed. And when Dred Scott appeared before Roger Taney, the Supreme Court Justice, in 1857, Roger Taney said to him, "You are not a citizen. African Americans, whether you're free or slave, are not citizens, and therefore, as a result of not being citizens, you have no right to sue anybody. Not only that, you are property of somebody else, and property cannot sue anyone, and therefore you will continue to remain a slave." So the Dred Scott decision angered slaves, angered people in the North, because it claimed African Americans had no rights because they were not citizens, and that was exactly the case. And this is important because later on a law will be passed after the Civil War that says that African Americans are citizens, directly as a result of this situation with Dred Scott. Split in the nation. So what does all of this have to do with one another? Both or all three, the Missouri Compromise of 1820, the Compromise of 1850, and the Kansas-Nebraska Act were concerned with the spreading of slavery into the Western territories. And you saw that one right after the other, compromises were created, laws were put into action that dealt with slavery, and ultimately led to a greater divide between the North and the South, because nobody was satisfied with the outcomes of these laws. And the reality is that they could only compromise the issue of slavery for so long. Eventually, they had to address the topic. They had to decide one way or the other to be a slave nation or to be a free nation, and to really to deal with the consequences that resulted from that decision. And it just so happened to be that the consequences that would result from that decision were civil war. All right, if you have any questions about any of this, do not hesitate to join me in a Zoom meeting. Take care.